crisscrossed by a network of drainage dikes in the fen country around the Wash. Gunby is out of place in these surroundings, built of a warm rose-red brick with limestone dressings. This elegant oblong, with a flat roofline and a broad flight of steps rising to a pedimented front door, should face an identical facade across a leafy London square. Yeah, I would agree with that. It is a townhouse stranded in the country. That's interesting. As the keystone over the front door proclaims, Gunby dates from 1700. It was commissioned by Sir William Massingberd, whose ancient Lincolnshire family had risen from the ranks of the yeomanry in the early Middle Ages to a baronetcy by the time of Sir Henry Massingberd in the 17th century, helped on their way by judicious marriages. When the last baronet died, only 20 years after the house was built, the property and the name descended through the female line. The warm panelled rooms are filled with fine old paintings, furniture and china, most of which have been in the family for generations. Among the treasures is Sir Joshua Reynolds' portrait of Bennet Langton, whose son Peregrine married the heiress to the estate in 1784, and who was a lifelong friend of Dr. Johnson. This association brought Gunby a very rare autographed copy of the first edition of Boswell's biography, one of only 6 known to have survived, and the only one in England. Tennyson, who was born at Somersby, only a few miles away, knew the house too, and it may have been Gunby that inspired the autographed lines that now hang in the front hall, with their reference to a haunt of ancient peace. The book-lined library, which was destroyed in 1926, when the wall between it and the hall was demolished and the books dispersed around the house, has been recreated by the National Trust. Its shelves filled with volumes acquired by the Massingbirds of many generations. Well, it's good that the library has been restored. The extensive wooded estate, crossed by a network of paths, incorporates some 15 farms and a stretch of disused railway line. The property also includes the remote Monksthorpe Chapel, near the little place of the same name. masterpiece. The Hanbury staircase is exuberantly baroque, with mythological scenes, most of them taken from Homer's Iliad, framed between classical columns on the walls and a host of deities set among clouds. Looking down from above, in the long hall below, where a bust of Vernon stands upon the fireplace, the subtle monochrome ceiling, probably ambitious squire's daughter, who rose from relatively humble beginnings to become one of the richest and best connected people in Elizabethan England. By the time Hardwick was begun, Bess was already approaching 70 and had 4 marriages behind her, each of which had advanced her social position and increased her wealth. Her last husband was George Talbot, 6th Earl of set off for London in 1862 to work as an architect, he returned 5 years later to live with his parents while he practised locally, continuing to write in the little upstairs room with a window looking west to the monument on Blackdown, 10 miles away. The cottage dates from 1800, when his family settled here, with its deep thatched roof, casement windows and cob walls covered in roses. It's very pretty. Honeysuckle and japonica. It is everyone's idea of what a cottage should look like. The sheltered old-fashioned garden, crowded with pansies, lupins, lavender, daylilies, pinks, marigolds, and a host of other plants, is as Hardy would have known it. Many of the places and incidents Hardy describes so vividly are drawn from his life here. The cottage itself appears in Under the Greenwood Tree, in which the villager stands is set in the parlour to the left of the porch. The description of the musicians ousted by the newfangled organ in Mellstock Church echoes what happened in Stinsford Church nearby, where Hardy's grandfather, father and uncle used to play the violin and cello for services, and Hardy used Egton Heath behind the cottage, now largely tamed but once a wild and desolate expanse of bracken, heather and gorse, stretching almost to the coast, as a setting for the return of the native. I'd never been there, but I'd like to go. So here we have Hatchlands Park in Surrey. In the late 1750s, Edward Boscawen, second son of the first Viscount of Falmouth and Admiral of the Blue, used prize money from victories over the French in the 7 Years' War to finance a new house. The architect of his square red brick Georgian mansion, properly Stiff Ledbetter, it's a strange name, ingeniously designed it with 7 different floor levels, looking at the house from the southwest. 3 stories on the west front change mysteriously into 2 on the south. Sadly, the Admiral did not live to enjoy his new mansion, dying only a year or so after he and his wife moved in. That's unfortunate. Hatchlands contains the earliest recorded decoration in an English country house by Robert Adam, who was engaged in 1758, just after he'd returned from his grand tour. Appropriately, his plaster ceilings in the saloon and library have nautical themes, the motifs used ranging from mermaids, dolphins and seahorses to drums, cannon and anchors. At the end of the century, Joseph Bonomi made alterations to the staircase and the garden entrance, and 100 years later, Sir Reginald Blomfield added the music room in 17th century style for Stuart